Hello and welcome to another episode of Feeding Fatty. This is Roy.
This is Terry.
This is a podcast that we chronicle our journey, through this weight loss, wellness, getting healthy, all the good stuff. But we also bring guests on from time to time. Today, we're fortunate enough to have Jeanette Hurt. She was actually our number 2 episode long,
You
seemed like
were.
forever
I
ago, but
know.
it's been about 6 months ago, and I think we just passed the 40th episode. So first off, welcome back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Terry intro you right quick.
Yeah. Jeanette Hurt is an award winning author of 15 books on food and drink, and she's a recipe developer for both publications and agencies. She regularly contributes to numerous magazines, including Forbes, Huffington Post, Eating Well, and Chicago Health. When she's not writing or developing recipes, you will find her walking along the lakefront with her family and their dog in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jeanette, welcome back. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun talking with you the first time, and I didn't realize I was your second guest, so I feel really honored.
Yeah.
You were. And we talked about your cauliflower book last time. And this time you have a new book, the unofficial ALDI Cookbook. That is awesome.
Well, I'm very excited about that. I've been a long time Aldi shopper. I grew up with a mom who shopped at Aldi back in the days when the stores didn't have much lighting and the generic brands were just bland looking on the shelves.
Yeah.
And the produce section was pretty sad with a couple of slimy heads of iceberg lettuce.
Oh, yum.
But but now, of course, Aldi has changed. And if anything, Aldi has become sort of a hip and fun discount grocery store. And they are growing like crazy and they are doing a lot of sustainable things. But of course, they always did some sustainable things, like the fact that the goods are just put on the shelves in boxes and you have to actually buy bags or bring your own. Or what I think is ingenious, some Aldi nerds actually just bring laundry baskets. So you
Oh,
stick it in the
wow.
cart and then they fill it up and then you're ready to go. And I thought, I need to do that. That's easier to carry all the groceries than in bags, which sometimes have things spilling out of them, especially if you pack them yourselves,
Right.
which we do at Aldi. So, and I'm not an expert grocery packer by any means.
I'm pretty good.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, just for those that don't know, because they've been here for a while, but Aldi is a grocery store, and I don't go there a lot, but what I will say is they have a small footprint. So when you need to just dash in, get something, it's just not overwhelming. I think
Yeah.
I'll let you confirm this, Jeanette, but I think they have like mostly their store brand. So there's not a huge
Yeah.
selection of choice. You kind of get what they have. But again, maybe like 3 aisles in the store. The one you walk down, the second one, just not
There's
that
a
much.
couple
Not,
more, but there's not. There's about 3 or 4 aisles, and you don't have to spend hours wandering through the store trying to find the tomato paste,
right.
which that's a good example because I've been buying tomato paste back when I was a young, just out of college newspaper reporter, and I was working part-time and I couldn't afford things. And their tomato paste was 27 cents. I still remember this
Oh,
because I
wow.
could make homemade spaghetti sauce and it wouldn't cost me an arm and a leg. Now, that same can of tomato paste used to be 33 cents up until about a month ago, and they raised it to 41 cents, which is still cheaper than the 75 cents or a dollar you're going to pay at most other grocery stores. And I don't know how you feel about tomato paste, but I think tomato paste is tomato paste. You don't need a brand name.
Yeah.
The other cool thing I noticed is that they let their checkers set on a stool when they check you out. I don't know if that's everywhere here, but it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. They don't make them stand up, for something that they can do, just passing them over the scanner.
No, and they're the fastest scanners or checker outers of any grocery store I've been to. And even if you go in, well, you first, if you're just running in for a couple things, you might just throw them in your bag. But if you need a cart, you need to bring a quarter, because they have this ingenious system. You stick in the quarter and you get the cart, and then you get your quarter back when you hook it up. And that saves them on labor costs, because they don't have people who have to go and catch the stray carts in the parking lot or move them around. Everyone brings them back. And
Right.
you get in a few more steps if you're trying to get in more steps, because you have to bring the cart back.
Yeah.
But again, their parking lots aren't as big. Their footprints aren't large. So you're not going to have this huge, like I'm thinking about the times when I go to Walmart and the parking lot is just ginormous and I can get 300 steps just going across the parking lot.
Right.
So you check in and then you bag your own groceries. And if you don't have bags, you can buy them, which some people do, or you can just do what I've often done when I've forgotten, or more likely my husband has forgotten to put the bags back in my car. So I'll just grab a box off the shelf, and that's what I'll use to take my groceries to the car, especially if it's only a few things. So that is one thing. The other thing I think people need to know, besides the good prices and the fact that you're not going to spend it many times, because there aren't usually 20 brands of mayonnaise, there's one or two.
Right.
There aren't 20 kinds of balsamic vinegar, there's just one. The quality is high enough unless you have really specific tastes. But what I think is kind of funny, there are some people on these Aldi Facebook groups who will say, well, my husband only likes such and such ketchup, but then I buy the Aldi ketchup and I put it in the name brand bottle. He doesn't know the difference.
I might have to do that.
Yeah, I was
with
going to
peanut
say,
butter.
watch out now.
So there's that. But then, of course, there's the AOS, their aisle of specials, or as people call it, the aisle of shame, which is sort of a shame on you if you don't go there. If you wanted, I could take you on a tour of my house of the things I got in the AOS aisle, including most recently for my son's birthday, a waffle maker, which cost me $26. And it's the nicest waffle maker I've had. I've had other ones, but this one is fantastic.
Wow.
And that was just a recent thing, but I've seen espresso machines. I've gotten a bathing suit there. That was actually one of my favorite bathing suits.
Oh, gosh.
Just unusual things that are food or home goods, but they're kind of fun. And usually around the beginning of the year, you'll find fitness equipment. Now the fitness equipment is mostly sold out, but you might find a few things that didn't sell at reduced prices. Around Christmas, starting in November, they will have their Advent wine calendars, which sell out really fast. They also have Advent cheese calendars. So a cheese a day for 25 days.
Oh my gosh.
Little tiny ones. And they've had things like 10 days of sparkling wine after Christmas or things like that as well. And those are, they're fun.
We need to go back there. I mean, I can tell you, I've probably only been in there about 5 times. I know that it's changed. We just get set in our ways and, go
You
to
don't
the
think
same
about
place.
it.
Yeah.
You don't think about it. And there are frequent conversations on Aldi Facebook groups and other social media groups about, well, what are the things you wish Aldi had? Or sometimes they'll have special things like, for example, my son absolutely adores seaweed chips. And they're only there, maybe once a year. So you buy them up, but they're, instead of $1 a tiny package, they're $1 for 3.
Ah,
And
Wow.
so you buy them up. But so sometimes you can't get things there. Like you can always get certain things at your regular grocery store.
Yeah.
Now, that's one thing about my cookbook. You can make every single recipe with just going to an Aldi. And there are some things like, I'll say, for example, my pot roast soup, it tastes better if you add some fresh herbs. Aldi only sells fresh cilantro. Maybe once in a while they'll sell other fresh herbs, but not really. They do have a good substitute of herbs in a tube, which are, I think, the next best thing.
yeah.
But if you want fresh rosemary or fresh thyme, you're not going to get it at Aldi. So there are some things that you can't get. but for everyday basic cooking and everyday basic needs, Kleenex for 75 cents a box.
Wow.
Or not Kleenex, it's facial tissue. It is not the name brand of Kleenex, unless it's a special item, which they sometimes have. But I don't need name brand facial tissue.
So I just was going to ask, is the inventory consistent from store to store? Or are they like, we have some stores down here that each one may vary a little bit different what you're going to walk in and find?
It's pretty consistent. There is some variation. I've seen Hellman's mayonnaise in some Aldi stores, and I've seen Duke's in others, but their name brand is Berman's. And I'm not sure what the difference is. I probably need to buy all three and taste it individually to actually see. But so there is some things like that. And I don't often shop in Aldi's outside of my state. I've shopped a lot in Wisconsin, and my family's down in Illinois, so I've shopped there. And my parents have a condo down in Florida, so I've shopped in one Aldi there. But
Okay.
I can't, like, for example, I know every Aldi will have a good cheese selection. Now that changes. There are some that I've noticed are not specials, like you can get imported Spanish Manchego cheese and it's there year round.
Right.
But you might not get Irish cheddar. You only get it usually starting in February through March and maybe a little bit of April around St. Patrick's Day.
So that's a ringing endorsement from not only somebody from Wisconsin, but also somebody that's written 3 books on cheese. That
Yes.
when you say that they have a good selection of cheese, then
Yes.
they have a good
They
selection
do.
of cheese.
They do. I've found things like 1,000-day Gouda from the Netherlands,
Oh my
and that was a special, or Car Valley Fontina cheese and things like that.
I want cheese.
So now, of course, one of your latest books was the Wisconsin Cocktails. In the last time that we talked, you just released the cauliflower comfort food, which is awesome because we definitely tried to do more with cauliflower, getting away from, rice, and just trying to make it a staple of my diet. I'm still working up to some of the vegetable categories, but
doing a lot better.
yeah. So what made you go out and decide to write this cookbook that specifically aimed at Aldi and the foods that they sell at their stores?
Well, it was twofold. After I wrote my cauliflower comfort food cookbook, my publisher wanted another book idea. So I was tossing around different things, and my publisher actually has published a series of books on Trader Joe's cookbooks.
Interesting.
And I thought, and I also knew that Aldi and Trader Joe's at the way corporate level in Germany has a connection. I think one of the two brothers that owns Aldi also owns a stake in Trader Joe's. So I
Okay.
thought, well, that's kind of interesting. There's that connection. So I suggested it, and my editor, who is based in Brooklyn, that's where their publishing offices are. And Brooklyn does not have a lot of Aldis, I might tell you.
Right.
They weren't sure how popular an Aldi cookbook would be. So they hired me to develop 2 recipes to test the market and on social media. And of course, they were well received. So then I got my contract for my Aldi cookbook just before the pandemic. So that's kind of how that came about. But the other thing is I've been shopping at Aldi for years.
Okay.
And usually I live in the city of Milwaukee, and in my neighborhood, there isn't an Aldi. I could travel 15 minutes or out to some suburbs that have it. But usually the Aldis I shop at are the ones near where my son practices gymnastics. When he was on a team in West Allis, Wisconsin, I shopped at the West Allis Aldi. Now he's up at Infinite Gymnastics in Brown Deer. So I go to the Brown Deer or the Glendale Aldi because they're near his gym. And like a busy mom, I don't have time to go to a lot of different things. So a lot of the times when I'm cooking, I will just make it on what I can get at Aldi. And in the summer, I go to farmers markets. So that's pretty much, and once in a while I go to Trader Joe's because there are a couple of things I absolutely adore there. So that's pretty much where I do my shopping. I don't have a lot of time to waste. I work and I'm a mom, and I'm also now a learning coach for online school.
Oh gosh.
My goodness.
Yeah, not to make a pun, but your plate is full.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't resist. So I like the way that you have this laid out, and it's interesting too. Of course, you led with the beverages, the wine slushy, the sangria. So
Yes,
uh,
of course. You know my background. So.
yeah, right, exactly. So no surprise there. So were there some surprises that you came across as you tried to put this together, pleasantly or displeasant?
There were definitely some surprises because I looked at some of the things were recipes that I've been making for my family for years, like the roasted asparagus. I have done different versions of roasted asparagus for years. And since we're entering spring and asparagus is in season, I definitely recommend that recipe. And if you're trying to get more vegetables in your diet, it's the most delicious asparagus, in my opinion.
Okay.
So there's some recipes like that, and like many of the fish dishes, I cook a lot of those. But then there are some things, my editor said, I'd like a recipe with this in it.
Okay.
So then I had to develop things like the pot roast soup. And the Swiss steak was a recipe I grew up with my mom making her own version. So I had to come up with my own for the ALDI cookbook. And it was definitely fun. And one of the other interesting things is my sisters shop at Aldi, and my one sister, Karen, is a big cook, and she would tell me, "Oh, I went to this party and my friend Lisa made this pizza dip that was so good." And she'd describe it to me, and I'm like, "Well, then I have to try this. I have to recreate it." This is the kind of thing I was like, "Ooh, this is really good." And then I have one of the things that did happen, of course, after I finished sending in all my recipes and my publisher and editors have edited it and it went to press. Of course, there were other recipes that I thought, ooh, this would be perfect.
Yeah.
So I have an Entertaining with Aldi cook booklet, which I'll send you the link for. If you buy my book, you can get a free copy of it.
Oh, awesome.
And it has some of these recipes like my friend Beck made this, we call it Beck's crack dip because it's addictive. It's blue cheese, apricot preserves, cream cheese, and green onions and bacon. And it is just to die for. And I was like, oh, that belongs in my book, but it doesn't. It's not in my book. So I had to write a little free booklet for people. And that was also kind of fun to do. So it's 12 extra recipes.
Awesome. Yeah, and that was my next question. It sounds like that you took some familiar recipes and you kind of adapted to what you could buy at Aldi, but then maybe also threw in a couple to say like these are going into the store to look at what's available and then developing a recipe based off of that.
Yes, some of it were things like I used my au gratin potatoes. One thing people talk about on the Aldi Facebook, which I had never bought in my life, were canned potatoes, because I don't think it's that hard to boil potatoes and peel them.
Right.
But I tried them, and actually for certain things like hash browns and au gratin potatoes, they're simple because they're already peeled. You just rinse them, chop them up, throw them in a pan, and they were really, really good. And it's something I definitely think is great to have on hand in your pantry. If, for example, you're making something and you're like, oh, darn it, I don't have any potatoes. And then you can whip up a potato dish that actually tastes pretty good.
Okay, cool.
Or really good, depending on the dish. The au gratin ones, of course, you throw a bunch of cheese on anything and it's divine.
So how hard was it as you went through the process, testing all the recipes, the family reaction? How did all that go for you?
It went really well. And it's funny because the other day my husband was looking through the book. He's like, I'd like to have this. And I'm like, you have had this. You've had this several times.
Pay attention.
He's like, oh yeah, I did. I remember that. Which is kind of funny, but And it was interesting to me to also adapt, because I think some of it were, sometimes I bake from scratch, but sometimes I don't. And I know a lot of people who shop at Aldi, you don't have a lot of time. And some of these recipes, like the cake mix sugar cookies, are for things like when it's 9 o'clock at night and your child reminds you that you have to bring the treats for scouts
Oh,
or practice or whatever.
been there, done that.
Yeah.
That's terrible. It's like, okay, now I have to wake up at 3 a.m. to get
Yes.
there.
So, as you went through, I guess how much trouble, and I'm not the chef. Terry should be asking this
Oh,
question
no.
probably because she'd understand. But like, was there that big of an issue adapting? Do you like take a recipe into the store and then be like, okay, they don't have this, I need to substitute this and that? Kind of how did that process go?
Well, that's kind of how my mind works all the time when I'm developing recipes for my clients, is they'll tell me, I want a recipe that's this. And usually, sometimes, for example, I do develop some recipes for hospital and healthcare systems, and one of them is a bariatric clinic. So they'll tell me, I want X, Y, or Z recipe. So I'll give them some ideas and we'll negotiate. We'll figure out which ones they want. And then I'll start thinking, well, how can I make this healthier? And usually then I'll go into the recipe, the store with a list. And also, I've just been cooking long enough and I've taken enough classes that I know how things work and how you can make substitutions, how you can make it healthier. If we're talking about healthier things, if you want to make a recipe healthier with less oil, using an olive oil spritzer or spray, whether it's one that you fill the olive oil in yourself or you buy it already in a spray can, that's an easy way to lower the amount of oil in a recipe.
Oh,
Yeah, we've been discussing getting on more of a trying the plant-based foods out. So I'm trying to figure out some recipes for that.
Well, one of the things I will say, Aldi has a very good vegetarian and vegan selection.
Awesome.
Some of it is permanent, some of it is not. If you need unsweetened almond milk that tastes great, you'll find it there.
Okay.
What I would say with replacing things with plant protein, you can go all the way completely, but you can also do things like even my meatloaf recipe, it always has vegetables in it.
Right.
You're getting a serving of vegetables when you don't realize it, especially if you make a homemade tomato sauce on top for it. Instead of just putting ketchup, it's got more vegetables that way. I think the other thing is taking things that you think that you really like and looking for a good substitution. There are some you can do, like instead of burgers, I've seen mushroom burgers and vegetable burgers. If you add some nuts to it or mushrooms and you add enough spices, it's still got a little bit of that umami flavor and it's really satisfying.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome.
so enough of the small talk. Let's get right to the desserts.
Oh, I remember the chocolate chip cookies with the cauliflower.
So there's about 10 desserts on here. It's wide ranging from the cherry surprise, chocolate chip banana bread. So which one of these was yours and your family's favorite?
My husband loves banana bread, and I think banana bread tastes better with chocolate chips. Actually, I think almost any dessert tastes better with chocolate chips. And when I was actually developing the cookbook, just before I had to turn it in, I realized, oops, I don't have many non-chocolate dessert recipes in the book, so I had to come up with a couple. And I think in the cherry surprise filled cupcakes with chocolate ganache is definitely one of my personal favorites.
Mm.
The poop emoji cupcakes are my niece's favorite because she loves poop emojis. She's a first grader and she just thinks the poop emoji is so funny. And that was a fun one to come up with, because usually if you make these cupcakes, you'll see on Pinterest and places like that, they'll have the candied eyes for the cupcakes, which you can't even get them usually at regular grocery stores. You have to order them online or go to a baking store.
Right.
I don't know about you. I don't have time for that. So I thought, well, what would taste better? Marshmallows and chocolate chips for the eyes taste better than candy, hard candy eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Those are so cute.
right. So, what else? The interesting one I found here was the brownie oranges.
Yeah.
Oh, that one is so good. And it takes time. And I adapted a recipe that I had found a safari company in Africa does out on safari. They grill them. They make them and they grill them in the fires in their camps.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, you can do that in your oven and it's easier than doing it on a safari camp.
Right.
And it's so good. And I love chocolate and orange. And I think there's a note that says you can add some orange liqueur like Grand Marnier, which you can't get at Aldi right now, but you might have it in your liquor cabinet at home. I'm a big fan, if you can't tell, of baking with booze. I think it
Yeah, and it's just an interesting combination. I've never really thought about the orange
Yeah,
and the
with
chocolate
the
together.
chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
well,
cool.
it's a good dessert also if you want to take brownies and upscale it for a party.
Okay.
And it makes a presentation. And if you wanted to get extra fancy, you could just take chocolate ice cream or sorbet and scoop it and put it on the side, and throw on a piece of chocolate, and there you go. You've got this gourmet presentation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the other thing, I was just skimming down through some of the recipes. I think it's awesome. Like in I'm looking at the slow cooker oats, that you've got notes down at the bottom where you can, make different substitutions that, like I said, somebody inexperienced like myself may not be able to figure that out on our own. So it looks like you have, documented some different things that people can do as well.
Well, I try to make everything in it when I'm developing a recipe. I try to write it not just for the most experienced cooks or chefs. I like to spell things out because way back when I would test recipes for the newspaper that chefs developed, very often the chef would forget to include the first step, which is to heat the pan with nothing in it for 1 to 2 minutes. Because if you want to get a proper sear on meat or fish, or if you want to caramelize vegetables, if you don't heat it up first, you're going to end up with a mistake, which is what happened to me when I was testing a caramelized Brussels sprouts recipe, and the chef didn't include that step when I was more of a novice cook. And I ended up, instead of caramelized Brussels sprouts, I had burnt Brussels sprouts, which does not smell good in your kitchen.
No, that doesn't smell
I
good.
think that is one takeaway that we have
That's what I was
put
gonna
into
say.
practice since we talked to you last, is we have started heating our pan before we put butter, oil, or anything like that. Just one of those little tricks I never ever thought about.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that makes it easier and it speeds the cooking process up. You can throw things in the pan, but it's going to take longer.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you taking time again out of your day to come in and talk to us. So, any other thoughts on the cookbook before we wrap this up?
Well, I think there are three things. Number one, if you haven't been to Aldi in a while, check it out and go with an open mind. I would say when you go through the things that I love there, besides things like staples like tomato paste, their produce is usually very fresh. I love their cheese. Their meats, there's always an organic section. My family loves the organic grass-fed ground beef.
Okay.
And I love the fact that all of their seafood is sustainable. And then, of course, check out the AOS, the aisle of specials. And if you're a wine or beer drinker or cider drinker, check out the liquor aisle, because usually they've got some really, really good wines there at very, very reasonable prices.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to make a commitment
Oh,
to
yeah.
swing by there and check them out again and see what we can do. We'll take the cookbook along with us, where we'll have it handy where we could throw together some of these good recipes here.
It's just such a genius idea for a cookbook.
It is. It is.
Anything where you can just go and do one-stop shopping and then make sure, everything is fresh and available. Just what a great concept. I love it.
Well, I'm so glad you do. And let me know after you've tested some of the recipes, which ones are your favorite.
Will.
Okay. So, we ask everybody, what is a habit that you have, and it could be in the kitchen or just personal, but what is something that you do every day that really adds a lot of value to your day?
Well, I try to pray. I think that's important whether I'm driving or walking. Sometimes that's the only time I get to center my mind and focus on what's important. I have a dog, so most days I have to walk her, even if I don't get in a personal workout where I'm actually sweating. I have to walk the dog. And I think it's also important for your health and well-being to get outside and get in some vitamin D if it's available, because sometimes it's not sunny, but even if it's not sunny, it's good to get outside and nature, even if it's just your city block.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot. So tell everybody, how can they reach out? And that's one thing I forgot to ask you. Has this book released already?
Yes, it has. It
Okay, good.
has. And we can say it's a best-selling book because it was for 1 week the number one in its category on Amazon.
Awesome.
Nice.
Congrats.
Thank you. That was very exciting. So it is available, and I will send you the link where people, if they buy my cookbook, to actually pick up the free Entertaining with Aldi booklet, which I'll also send you.
Okay.
I think besides Beck's Crack Dip, the 2 recipes there that did not make the book that I would have loved are my glazed bacon recipe, which my son loves. And then there is an ingenious cheese trick for pairing with red and white wine, which is you take a fresh cheese like ricotta or burrata or fresh mozzarella or chev, and you grate pepper on it, and you also zest lemon on top. And the lemon zest and the black pepper pairs both red and white wines together absolutely perfectly. And it's something you should definitely try.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Awesome. That sounds good.
Yeah.
So tell everybody how they can reach out and get a hold of you. And of course, we can go to Amazon, but I'm sure that you have these available on your website as well.
My website is JeanetteHurt.com. And the book is available. A good place to go is to Ulysses Press, which is my publisher.
Okay.
And that's also where you can go to get the free copy of Entertaining with Aldi. And the other place you can find me is Jeanette Hurt Author, is a web page on Facebook. And I also am on Twitter and Instagram, not as often as I'd like, but it's @by Jeanette Hurt.
Okay. Yeah, because not only do you want to pick up the Aldi book, but also look through these others, the Wisconsin cocktails, cauliflower comfort food, the joy of cider, a lot of good stuff that Jeanette has put out there. So we appreciate that. Y'all stop by and pick up one of these. It'll enhance your dining and entertaining experience for sure.
And your palate.
Yes. All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Feeding Fatty. Of course, I am Roy.
I'm Terry. Jeanette, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me back.
But you can find us, of course, at www.feedingfatty.com. We're on all the major social media networks. And a video of this interview will be up once the episode is released. You can also find us on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to regularly, please reach out. We'll be glad to add you. So until next time, take care of yourself.